The first thing we're going to start off with today is the dough. And one of the most important things before you do the dough is you're supposed to do a stretch. So you simply would just lean against the pole like this to stretch your arms and your back. It's always key to just do a good stretch before your dough. You want to loosen up all your body parts before you do your dough, because sometimes the dough is very vigorous. Sometimes it can be cold and hard to pound out. This would be our dough docker, or I'm sorry, bench knife, dough docker, and our bowl of rice flour. Sometimes on different dough, it tends to be a little puffy, as such as this one. Or I brought out an example of a cold dough that seems to be a little more firm to the touch. Most of the time this is coming from the cooler, it's going to be a cold, firm dough like this. You could take out this dough an hour before service so it starts to expand a little like this to let it rise. And then at this point you're going to want to use your dough docker, and you want to pinch all your sides as sewn like this so it comes free of anything it touches. Now the key of this, taking out this dough ball, is to make it round, because the ball itself is a live ball and it wants to form back to its round shape. So you take this and you simply cut into the sides very softly around on each one. And you can just lift with your fingers and separate it if need be. At this point you want to sneak underneath the dough ball, put your fingers underneath, and do a quick scrape like this. Raise the ball into the bowl of flour, pat it down, set it aside. At this point, if you have any loose pieces like this, you can just cut it away and discard it. At that point, you can do all of them the same way. Pat it in there. You can put, I usually put about 3 on top of each other. At this point, you want to push down, and any bubbles like this are going to pop out. That's what you're doing basically with this step, is you're blowing out the bubbles that may rise in the dough. Now if you just take one individually, I usually take this hand and spin it this way, and take my fingers and crimp the edges so there's no more bubbles inside. At this point you take your dough docker. You really want to avoid doctoring the middle, because that's the most point where it stretches on all pizzas. So you really want to just work on doctoring the edges. Now a lot of people pull the handle like this and they go in like this. With my height and my arm length, it's easier for me to go straight like this with my wrist. But a lot of people are shorter than me, so they tend to go down to here and they pull it like this. Either way is fine. You really want to just work on your edges. And you really don't need to touch the middle on a soft dough like that. On a harder dough, a colder dough, it's the same concept. You're pinching out the edges, work your edges. And this is going to take a little more doctoring because the dough itself is cold. But it ends up to be the same one. You could do a light one in the middle on the colder ones, but that's just a light one. Most of the tension and the pushing is on your edges. And you do not need to flatten it way out past the existing screen length. Basically what you want to do at this point is you're going to pull it. And the way to pull it, a lot of people can tentatively throw it up in the air and twist like that and pull it that way natural. That's fine. But normally I usually catch it on this hand and pull with this hand like this. So I'm just working the edges. So it's basically just throwing it like this. You're going to let, obviously, the gravity on the bottom, you can feel it pulling towards the bottom like this. And then you're going to simply lay it on the screen. Now I took that doctored side. That is my bottom. So when I pull it, I'm going to do this and put the doctored side on the bottom of the screen. And then I will simply want to pull it over the edge, where if you're going to look at it like this, it's just simply right over the edge a little. Because when you put sauce and ingredients on there, and when it cooks in the oven, it tends to shrink up a little, and then it'll be perfectly 16-inch. You do not want a bunch of hanging crust like this, or if you drop it, you do not want the crust to go like this. You want it to go over the edge just a little. That's the thing about the dough. If it does go over the edge, you could always drop the screen like this and bring the dough back down to size. So it's perfectly 16 inches around. Today I'm just going to show you large pizzas instead of doing the smalls and the mediums, since we prominently sell large pizzas. So in the morning you can pre-pound all these doughs, and you can actually put them back in the trays by putting rice flour between each one and layer them. A nice comfortable fit is 10 dough balls per tray, and you just put flour between them and they do not stick. This, if it has flour on it, you can just flip over just like this. Flour gets on the screen and they will not stick that way. It's the same idea. So if I got a large thin crust, I'm going to take a medium 12-inch dough ball, and I'm going to first doctor it like normal. This is a cold dough ball, so it's going to take a little extra doctoring. At this point I'm going to put more flour on it, and this flour is basically incorporated back into the dough, and it's going to stretch out your dough. It's going to get the dough crispier to make a good thin crust. Flip it again, more flour. As you can see, it's already expanding on the table before you even pick it up. And I'm not putting too much pressure, I'm just rolling with the docker. And it's expanding as we speak. At this time I could take a screen, pick it up, and this is a light toss. You do not want to pull it too hard to make any holes. And that is basically how you make a thin crust pizza. When you do the ingredients on this, everything is lighter than normal, sauce and ingredients. One of the biggest problems with new people taking the dough out of the tray is they tend to smash it. They don't know how to use this, or they use their fingers too much, and they're poking holes in it like this, and they tend to smash the dough together. Once you start doing this, your dough ball is very hard to get back to a round surface. Or they do one of these and they smash it into a glob of dough ball, and then you have too much problems. You can't get it back to a round surface because it's already oblong. You really want to focus on sliding this thing underneath and keeping that ball round. Sliding up very lightly, picking it up, keeping it round. Tendency, a lot of people, when it's smashed like this, even I think I could save this one by just taking the extra second, making those cuts, pulling it separate like this very softly, and then just lifting it up very soft. It has bubbles in it, as you can see, but you can pound those out. Just pop those bubbles out very soft. There's a big bubble right there. And then you can pull it like this, and then you can form it back in your hand so it's a round ball. You really do not want to smash your fingers in there or deform a ball like this. It's very hard to get back to shape if you have any holes or anything like that in it. A good step to stay ahead of the ball game, because you do get many pizzas coming in fast, is to have one of these racks and to have your dough pre-pounded, because you're going to go through many. If you have a rush coming at you and you know you're going to come, you have to prepare for it. So the best way to do is get these dough balls on the screen and get ready to make pizzas as fast as you can. Best way to do it is to do this. You do not want to do too many ahead of time, because then the screens or the skins will start to dry up, because the air in the kitchen will tend to dry them out. You don't want dry skins. That's why it's always good to keep them in a tray like this, keep them covered so they don't dry out. Now as I put them on here, they may tentatively go back off the screen, but when I take them over to here, I can reshape them back onto that 16-inch form that I want.